of the Information Forum. I'm going to open with a karakia. Tua ki ranga, tua ki raro, tua ki roto, tua ki wahua, tua tātou te tangata. Te tangata, ke te kaupapa o te hui nei, ki te kaupapa o te ranga nei, muri ora ki a tātou katoa. Bind above, bind below, bind within, bind beyond, bind us the people to the purpose of our meeting, to the purpose of this day. Breathe life into all of us, and hopefully technology is sorted. Anyway, welcome to this, our very first forum. Today we will be, this is a new forum. There's going to be a lot of learning. It will morph and change, no doubt, as each one comes along. So bear with the staff and I and my beautiful co-chair sitting next to me. So today there will be an opportunity to ask some questions to our presenters, of which I believe we have 4 of them. There will be opportunities for our staff to respond, and if they don't respond today, they will come back to us at some stage. I will collate some action items as and where required, and they will be followed through. I ask that for the purpose of today that you speak through me, the chair, and I've decided that we can use first name spaces. So, yeah. The only other thing that I'd like to note before we go through what actually the staff have provided me with on the agenda is for our meetings, the apologies will be recorded. So if you're not able to attend, could you please let staff know? And I do note this morning we have Paul and Mark Greening on Zoom. So welcome everybody. As you may be aware, this meeting is being live streamed and will be available on Council's YouTube channel. Please can you mute your microphone unless you are speaking. And those attending on Zoom, to turn off your camera and microphone unless you're about to speak, please. The toilets, for those who don't know, are out in the foyer to your left. And we do welcome the media here today. Thank you for showing up. And I don't have anyone on public forum, so I don't have to share about our hearing assistance. So today we have received 2 apologies. One is from the Mayor and the other one is from Councillor Newboer. Could I please have someone move those apologies? Thank you, Councillor Mardine and Mark. Thank you for seconding. Everyone in favour? Thank you. We don't have any speakers in public forum today. However, this forum does have the opportunity to have people come and speak in public in future. Could I please ask, has anyone got any declarations of interest? It would be none. And there are no late items. And we can't confirm any minutes, so there isn't any. And we're going to ask for Leonie Ray to come and present to us the long-term plan launch. Thank you, Leonie, and welcome.
Kia ora koutou, everyone. Yes, first information forum. So as the chair has said, we will get your feedback and how it's working for you, and then we'll modify things as we go along. But so today I'm just doing it. This is for information. It's also a little bit of a briefing. It's called Leading Tasman's Future. Why I put that there is because we're going to talk a little bit about long-term plan, which is where we're really turning our focus to. In terms of internally, I'm the sponsor for the LTP project, and I've got work streams. I've got general managers who are managing different work streams. So we're spreading the accountability across multiple layers, and then we've got people identified. So it's actually quite a big structure. It's absorbing a lot of staff, probably close to 40. And that's not including all the businesses that will be spoken to in terms of having to bring their activities together. So it actually is a really big program of work. So the LTP is 10 years, council's 10-year business plan, you can call it that. It includes the activities and services we plan to provide and to what level. Where we're talking about through the program of the LTP, we'll be talking about measures of performance, and those sort of performance measures are things that end up actually being reported through council and into their annual report. So there is that line of sight. It will also be in there what projects we plan to deliver, how much it will cost, and how they'll be funded. And all of this is required by the Local Government Act 2002. So it's very prescriptive about what we have to do in a long-term plan. So I've labelled this Leading Tasman's Future because actually I like to be asked to be thinking beyond a 10-year term, and across political cycles. We are stewards at the moment of a very long story for Tasman and looking into the future. The decisions we make in the LTP will shape Tasman for generations, for in Mokopuna, and going on. Our responsibility goes beyond 3 years, which we do this every 3 years. So we're going to talk about aspirations in the 4th of March workshop. And then under that, what are the things we're going to do to be able to realise those? And you won't be able to realise those in a 10-year term. Some of them may take 20, 30 years. So let's hope the technology works. There you go. So from the past to the future and what has shaped us so far. So it's always good to look back. We look backwards into the future with our eyes on the past. So I'm not going to. The whakatauki is quite difficult for someone who isn't linguistically capable. So we're looking back in terms of what have we delivered. Strong rural and coastal identity with farming, with horticulture, with forestry, fishing and tourism. That have been the main bread and butter of our region, and likely will continue into the future. But it's really about how much and how do we support that. We've got dispersed settlements, many small towns, rather than one dominant urban centre. That's more the past. That's actually changing. It's changing the shape of our region. We have a bit of a DIY and volunteer culture. Community solving problems locally, and that's something that we've supported and we want to continue to support. We've got abundant natural assets, water, soils, coastline, national parks. We all know how beautiful our region is. What do we want for our region and what we're going to be caretakers of? Historically, we've had low population pressure, allowing incremental growth and modest infrastructure. But this has changed. In this environment, previously the council's focused on keeping rates low. We had 1 year we had 0% rate rise. Our infrastructure was built just in time and not ahead of demand, and a culture of making do rather than long-term system design. The approach worked well for a very long time, but obviously we know things have changed. Next slide. Moving. There we go. Right. Shaping Tasman's future, the next 30 to 50 years, and these are some of the current and emerging forces. So this diagram is just really some of them. There are many others, but this is what we've got today. Rapid population growth and housing pressure. We've got our climate change impacts, flooding, storm damage, coastal risk, ageing infrastructure built for smaller, slower growing district, high regulatory standards, especially water, environmental and safety. We've got cost escalation in our construction area, insurance, borrowing and operations, changing community expectations, equity, resilience and quality of service, and local government reforms and legislative changes. These are some of the big key shifts that we will be addressing and trying to get ahead of in the long-term plan. So as I said before, the district plans a 30 to 50-year horizon, not just 10, and it may well be into the 100 years into the future. Infrastructure should be designed for climate resilience. We need to make clear choices about core services versus discretionary services, and greater focus on place-based solutions. Different towns have different needs. And stronger partnerships with iwi, communities, government, and our neighbouring council. Let's take you through the LTP timeline, and this is very truncated. You'll notice that there's a triangle, a black triangle. That black triangle is there because there's a huge amount of effort for elected members and council staff, so it's going to be quite an intensive time for the elected members and for us to provide the information. You'll be going through, looking at our services, activities, and making some workshopping some ideas, and then eventually coming to council to make those decisions. Preliminary budget we hope to have by end of June. We'll be going out to the community to receive feedback in October, November. And we need to have our consultation document ready for audit by Christmas this year. So effectively, we've got 10 months of quite concentrated work. We have to look at where we're going to put our energy. And remember, we also have our staff working on annual plans. We're preparing for the 1st of July, where those changes will come in. We have a new water services business unit and needs to be in place by 1 July next year as well. And this includes many back-end changes to our business. So there's a lot of work for us to get through. Don't be scared. We'll be confident we'll do it. I think we need a new clicker. This one isn't working. Can you not do it? I'll go back. Forward. I have to go back to go forward.
What your whakatauki said as well.
That's good. That's what the whakatauki said. So now the long-term plan, the strategic context. Now this is a waka, and you are the sail, and we are the boat. The sail, place leadership, is about leading the district well, and for the organisation, leadership is running the council well. So in a council context, working with others to shape the long-term well-being of a place. It's just focus on people, whenua, environment and economy, stewardship, not control, alignment, not always ownership, intergenerational outcomes. And it's not about council doing everything. Place leadership is about leading our district, not just running council. It means stewarding Tasman's long-term future, convening partners across the system, shaping growth and resilience, and making intergenerational decisions that go well beyond service delivery and political cycles. So what kind of district are we shaping, and how do we align our public, private, industry, iwi, community, business and central government effort? How do we steward long-term outcomes beyond political cycles and with local government and central government together? So council becomes the convener, steward and catalyst for the future of Tasman, not just a service provider. And again, it's not about council doing everything. My role for the next 3 years is organisational leadership. Is about running this council well. Place leadership is about leading the district well. And those are our two roles. So how do we envision the future of Tasman as a district over the next 30 to 50 years? Considering place leadership, providing the narrative that justifies strategic investment, explains long-term trade-offs, frames difficult conversations about growth limits in certain parts of the district, may talk about the retreat, service levels and intergenerational funding. We need to start engineering the conversation about how we might become a different council in the future, governing authority as a result of the reforms, amalgamation, government decisions, and service visited across councils, for example, just as many examples. So I've got a few there about long-term direction. These are required. We've got spatial planning. We're required to do that with the new changes to the RMA. We always have to have a growth strategy, how we sequence our infrastructure, how we're going to adapt to climate, how we're going to make our investments and what are the priorities for that, and what is the context of local government? Where do we sit in the system? So we've got to consider the natural environment, our infrastructure, our community wellbeing and intergenerational equity. So place leadership. It is the LTP is a primary mechanism for place leadership. It can translate long-term aspiration into strategic choices and links rates today to become tomorrow's public value. So a question is, can the community see how today's rates shape Tasman's future? And we need to be, people want to understand that. You understand what we do, how we deliver it, how we govern to make sure that what we do, what we say we do, we do. The community expects us to deliver on the LTP. So your role as EMs is to translate community expectations into a deliverable plan for our region's long-term future. And obviously, and I've also talked about beyond your term. So I'm going to talk a little bit about big levers, the power of big levers. I have had a few conversations with some of you about where we need to focus our energy, and you can focus hours and hours talking about things that actually aren't going to turn the dial. Like 250,000 over 10 years or something. We need to be talking about the big levers, the big things that we can change for our financial future and for what we want for councils. There's the diagram on the right, the matrix. We're going to put that on all our PowerPoints presentations to you around the activities. And we're wanting to focus mostly on value for Tasman, high, and low effort by the organisation. So we'll start talking about that a lot more. Is there value in spending a lot of time on, and I will use libraries as an example. There's not many choices in libraries. Close one, close them all, stop some of the programs, or reduce the opening hours. Those are all they're really only decisions that you could make. We're not going to spend hours on that. We might be decide actually we're happy with the service. Let's move on to the next one. So I'm just trying to use your time on those big levers that we can really change our future. And as remember that sail on the Waka, that's the sail. It's which you change the direction, and we'll follow through and deliver on that. So the big levers. I've got an example for you, which is around community housing. For example, is this a core activity of council? This is something that we would like to take you through with the PowerPoint presentations that we'll bring to you. Is this a core activity of council? Is there someone who could deliver that better? Do we establish formal housing strategy and targets? Do we allocate land for affordable key worker housing? Do we partner with CHPs, we call them CHIPs, like Kaingora or Salvation Army or Habitat for Humanity? Do we create a revolving housing fund? Do we use planning incentives, zoning levers? Do we divest and sell to current housing providers? These are some of the questions, and these are that we want you to think about. And what role do we play in that? Because until we decide what role we play, it's very difficult to be able to say what direction we want to go in. So, and the LTP will not list everything we do. We do. It will take us 2 years to get through everything we do. We're going to talk about the big stuff. You'll definitely have an opportunity to see all the activities. We're actually bringing all those together for you, so you'll see the 400 or so activities that services we deliver. But some of them are quite granular, so we'll want to keep it up at the more high level strategic decisions. So your commitment. I'm going to go back and I'm going to go forward because it seems to work that way. Seems like it times out. Just going to go forward. There you go. I think it times out. That's my technical analysis. So your commitment to the LTP. As I said, aspirations, future focus, built from the future back, fewer clearer strategic directions, and focus on big levers before projects. At the workshop on the 4th of March, you'll have an opportunity to workshop what 2050 could look like based upon your decisions in this LTP. What are the big levers you'd like to explore? We must be realistic in the time frame, and what it will achieve long-term intergenerational aspirations. We, the council staff, will look at projects. This is a top-down approach. Our review will be guided by your strategic directions for the region. The value matrix provides non-emotional based decision-making approach. Not everything we want to do will be what we want to do will be a priority. So what will success look like? We've got a good, clear strategic direction, and it's very important for staff. Staff want to know, what's my priority? What should I be working on? Where should we be putting our effort into? We want fewer higher impact priorities to address community expectations. Strong community narrative builds trust for both our council staff and our elected members and our community. And we want to also endorse a financial roadmap that provides for an affordable, resilient pathway. And there are some big levers in that space. Where our investments are, should we be in the business of certain things, or do we want to add to our investment portfolios? So this is about our community kōrero. What's the future? Manage attention together. We speak as one and own the outcome. We need to have some narrative to the community. For example, if you make a decision and the community reacts, we want to make sure we back ourselves. Because not everything we will do will be popular, but what we do want to do is make sure that the community understand why we've done something. And they might always like it, but they understand why we did it. We want to share the outcomes. We have to at times set aside our own personal goals and for focusing on fulfilling community aspirations, which means we need to hear from the community. And you are representatives of those communities. We want to rebuild and strengthen trust between the organisation and the community through our collaborative efforts. It's about all of us working together, trying to balance affordability, service levels and delivery expectations. And our response involves leveraging strategic communication to provide context and clarity. We want to have long-term solutions such as empowering future generations rather than only addressing immediate issues. If the strategic priority is cost reduction, then adapt communication accordingly and ensure all stakeholders have an opportunity to participate in a meaningful dialogue. And this is my last slide. This is trying to show you how this will work. What does good strategic direction pathways look like? So aspirations 30, 50 years, probably pretty static, might change slightly as things change over those many years. I won't be here in 50 years. I'm not like to be here in 30 years, but we like to think that we're on the right track. And you'll see down the very bottom we've got all the LTP cycles. So there are many LTPs over that time. Next 50, 30, well, I've just put 30 years and I haven't put the whole 50, it would have gone off the page. But you'll see at the top that you've got, based upon what the aspirations are for this LTP, what are your strategic directions? And I've just got 1, 2 and 3, right, to help achieve that. Now you've got your BAU. No question, we've still got the BAU. But it's about other things that you want to do. Do you want to enhance the environment? Do you want to do more work around our waterways? Do you want our waterways to be swimmable by 2040? Those are the types of things we're talking about. And then what are you going to do in your strategic direction to be able to do that? We want resilient infrastructure. What we're going to do? We want to adapt to climate change. What do you want to do? So those are what I'm talking about. And then that helps inform where you invest and where you put your money. And where and staff put their time. As I say, the BAU stuff will continue on because we're required to deliver that. So at the 4th of March workshop, we are looking to get a facilitator in for the day to help you work through what those aspirations might be and what those strategic priorities might look like. Our engagement team by then will have met with community association chairs, NRDA, developers and some of the representative development community, construction businesses, Tasman Unlimited, etc., to hear what their aspirations and thoughts for the future of Tasman. So we will share those with you. So you'll have some. So we're doing that at the moment, getting feedback and engagement. I've got Sue sitting beside me because Sue is a lot of this work sits in Sue's team, the policy team. All the annual plan, LTP, finance, annual report. So it's a huge amount of work. And Sue's helped me put this together, this presentation. So I just really want to set the scene for what's coming up and for you to get a little bit excited about it. You know, let's not think it's just a a legislative document you do and then you put it on the shelf, because that's not what we're wanting to do. We're wanting to make sure that we've got a plan and then we can pick it up again in 3 years' time and say, how far along have we got to that aspiration? And when I talked to iwi chairs, they said, when I asked them about the LTP, their aspirations haven't really changed. They want to be able to want all the waterways to be fishable and healthy. What have you done to get there? What did you do in your plan to actually achieve that? And there's a lot of work we have already done, and we can share that with you through the LTP process. Where are we at? What did we do in the last 10 years? And where we are in terms of progressing that. And you might want to dial that up more and say, we want more of that, or you want to dial it down more. So those will be some of the decisions that you'll make. So has anyone got any questions or any clarification? It's a lot to come.
Thank you for that, Leonie. I believe Dean had his hand up first.
Yeah. Chair, can we have these information circulated to us? Quite helpful if we can see it before the meeting, but certainly at least afterwards, these slides.
Yeah, I look. I would have put it up earlier, but I was on leave, and it was kind of a tight time frame. So, yeah, next time you will. But we've got the presentation now. No,
Through you, Leonie, we haven't got it now, but I've just been advised we will get them in the minutes of this meeting.
Yeah.
So thank you.
Yeah.
My question is, given the precarious nature of our finances and the constraints that the government is going to implement, apparently, I would have thought finance would have been a good place to start rather than pipe dreams that may not fit into a financial constraints that we have.
That's a good question. Obviously, we've got a fiscal envelope that we have to work within, but we have opportunities to dial things up and dial things down. Should we be doing this? Should we, underperforming assets, should we start selling some of those and reinvesting them in something else? So it's about using what we've got and making sure and knowing where we're going to invest that money. So yes, you're quite right. I mean, blue sky thinking. I mean, we've got to be realistic as well. But it's more about things like, I'll give you some examples. Maybe you want to accelerate regeneration of our natural environment. There's a whole lot of work. We get quite a lot of government money to help us with that as well, like riparian planting, etc. So we're already doing a lot of that now in the biosecurity and biodiversity space. I've got empowered communities taking action, helping communities deliver some of these services themselves or partner with us. We don't have to deliver everything.
Just through the chair, you said don't get bogged down into details where you got to focus on the big picture. Well, to me, the big picture is the financial picture. And that's not till April that we even bring that into the discussion.
There's a lot of work, but the budget is formed by some of the decisions that you make. So if you say, right, well, we want to increase the performance of certain parts of, I'll pull one out of for example, we do limbs, right? You might say, actually, we want to improve that service. We want to do it all in 5 days. Legislation says 10, we want to do it in 5 days. Then you need more people. That's their cost. So it's making it also who pays. Does the user pay, or do the community pay and they pick up the bill? Those are the decisions that will need to be made, and we can't form a budget until we know what some of those are.
I'm not talking about budgets for specifics. That's details. I'm talking about strategic. Where's our rates cap? Where's our debt cap? What is the corridor that we want to be steering down? And then we can look at how things fit once we've got that strategic goal. To me, that's big picture. Where do we start?
And we'll discuss that at the workshop. I mean, one of the objectives or key objectives will be, keeping within our fiscal envelope and keeping rates to a certain level. I mean, if that's a strategic objective, then there'll be some decisions to make to be able to deliver on that. So absolutely. I mean, completely. Again, I'm not talking about blue sky. Hey, we want to, have a region where we move everyone into an area that they're not going to be prone to flooding. What are we going to do? Are we going to build protection, or are we going to actually make sure that we don't allow more growth in those areas? Or where we put our looking after our transport network, making sure they're resilient. Because we do a lot of work, and if we spend millions in recovery, but we don't always necessarily invest in the resilience before we put something in. So we should be investing in that. And I know it's kind of like trying to catch up at the moment.
I appreciate the questions, Dean. Appreciate the response. Mindful that I have a big list of councillors that obviously want to ask something. So hopefully I can move on now to Kit.
Just follow on from Dean. I think we're going to do some work on a financial roadmap, and I see that as being a key. So it's similar to Dean. You've got to know where we're working. Okay, happy with that.
Thank you. Then I've got Brent and then Mark Green.
Thanks for the chair. And just to know, and the other part, community boards. So I heard every organisation but community boards in that spiel, and I haven't seen it on the list in terms of the next community boards in March. Because if we're having our workshop post that, just don't want to have the community boards missed out of that pre-consultation. Please.
Thank you. Well noted. I'll quickly slip in there about Youth Council as well. And now we're going to move to Mark. That's Mark Greening.
Hi, Trindy. I'm trying to select the video, but your administrator is preventing me. But anyway, I'll speak to the item. I don't need to be viewed. Again, I probably share Dean's concerns here, and having gone through these LTPs several times and under different CEOs as well, I do think that that it does need some scene setting, and probably the LTPs that I've seen work really successfully do the financial scene setting first rather than the blue sky aspirational stuff. I know it's been mentioned, but actually I think it's important that fiscal envelope, that financial position of council is fully understood before embarking on some wider aspirational thinking. And I think that is very useful, and it's certainly been useful in the past, and I've seen probably a slow shift away from doing that. Interestingly, the fiscal focus was done in my first term on council, and I think it was the only time that council actually achieved a debt projection through the LTP that was coming down and rates that were operating under 3%. So I think that's really important for councillors to understand that, and I would expect that before we do this aspirational, what I'd call not aspirational but actually strategic scene setting. I think aspirational is probably the wrong word to use, because that does invite blue sky thinking, and I think that needs to be set. I also, just in regards to I think you mentioned 1 March, I think it's actually 3 or 4 March.
No, it's 4th of March.
Yeah, 4th of March, not 1st of March. It's off-site, and I really don't understand why we need to go off-site. We've got all the resources here, all the staff are available. Logistics and costs of going off-site to me just seem, again, the wrong story that we should be doing. We have all the facilities and resources here. I think we should be holding our meetings on-site. We have a chamber which apparently we've enhanced, so we should be utilising it rather than going off-site, having the cost of logistics, the inconvenience of resources and all the rest of it. And I don't think we need to go off-site for these types of meetings. So I hope that that message will come through as well. And some of these things we don't want to see, and I imagine the public don't want to see unnecessary cost of going off-site. And I've raised this before because you've already had one off-site meeting already. But I think that message needs to come through as well. So those are my observations, and I certainly welcome the document being circulated. Thank you.
Thanks, Mark. Just for everybody else in the room, if we could stick to questions at this point in time, would be helpful.
Just to clarify, this room was already booked for hearings, so we couldn't use chamber on that day. And that's why we were off-site. And also, it's very difficult if people on, we need everyone in the room. It's difficult to run a workshop on Zoom because you've got to carry around microphones and it's just logistically very difficult. So those are some of the reasons why we made the decision to go off-site. It's not going to be the norm. I imagine that will be the only one we do.
Thanks for that clarification. We'll move on now to Dave.
Yep, thank you, Trinity, and through the chair. My question is around the guidelines for affordability. And so, I'll be a strong advocate through this process on affordable rates. Can the management team give some sort of consideration to what is the definition of affordable? We want to remain a competitive district. We don't want to see elderly people rated out of their homes. So all of this context, and even in our discussions here today, we're acknowledging there are financial constraints. What are those constraints? Why are we constrained? And I think you'll find the answer is we're trying as a group to keep rates affordable, but without a definition. I know Kapiti has set a guideline, 5% of their median household income for the district. I'd like to know if we can do similar.
Yeah, well, certainly there'll be an awful lot of discussion around what's constraining us and our affordability. I mean, believe me, it's top of all our minds. But we're going to have to make some tough decisions. But we also don't want to be going backwards either in terms of what we're delivering to the community, because they really need some of the services. So we're going to have to make some decisions about what level and what we could partner with. We need to be thinking broader than what we've always done. Yeah.
Very good question. Thank you, Dave. We'll move on to Mike, and then we've got Celia and then Joe.
Thank you, Madam Chair. And I agree with Councillor Woods, the affordability with Kapiti Coast is one good way to start looking. But my question today is, the previous LTP, we did a series of reviews of every work activity was must do, should do, like to do. Can I ask that we do that again this time around so that we can identify what we must do as to what we would like to do?
We can frame it that way. A must do doesn't necessarily tell you to what level you do things. So there's two questions there. So what we must do, and then what can people expect from that in terms of what level of service. So it was a big exercise. We've got the information. We are doing not a service catalogue, but we're certainly going through and assessing all our activities. And within that, there will be what's driving those activities. Legislation requires us to do it, to what level we do it. So all of those will be coming. You'll be getting all of that, and you'll know very, very quickly what we haven't got much choice in doing. Yeah, but then again, look at building consenting. I mean, building consenting we must deliver on, but do we have to do it? Could Nelson deliver it for us or somebody else? Okay, because we could outsource it.
Is that it from you, Mike?
I think that's a yes from the CEO, but so thank you.
I could comment, but I'm not going to. I'm going to move on to Celia.
Thank you, Trinity. My question's actually along the same vein, and I agree with it's important to look at the strategic direction, but also without, the financial picture, it just concerns me that we could end up in that scramble that we had last time of must, should, could, which, I know that it's a kind of rule of thumb type thing, but it did end up actually driving a lot of decisions and, we made some decisions which I don't think really stood up that well because they had to fit in to must, should, could. So I suppose you've already answered the question, but my concern is that we get actually caught up too much in must-should could because we didn't have enough financial picture before we got started.
What we will be providing will be a baseline budget. So what the first year of the LTP it was anticipated to look like. So we'll have a baseline, and then we'll say these are the things that have changed since that was done 3 years ago. So there will be a baseline budget. So you'll know where we're starting from or what was proposed. And so that's probably the best we can do at the start. And then as slowly we turn things up and dial things up or down, or want to say, actually, we want to, divest some assets or look at underperforming assets, perhaps pass them on. What does that do to the picture? So we continually are trying to pull whatever levers we can. It's a bit like your own budget at home, where you put your dollar.
Thank you, and Jo.
Thank you, through you, Chair. Thanks, Leonie. Very I remember how exhausting our last long-term plan was. I'm just wondering, I appreciate your point about not dwelling on those things that are a small budgetary issue, which I am supportive of. But has the team turned their mind to those services that we provide to the community that are on the grand scheme of things relatively small in the budget but have high importance? An example I can think of is libraries, although the budget isn't small, but or maybe even rubbish bins. So has the team put their mind to how we're going to deal with some of those things that I agree shouldn't necessarily take up a lot of time because the financial impact's quite small, but the social impact's high? So are we going to identify those and discuss those, or is that going to come out through feedback from the public?
Sorry, we'll come back to the activities. So what we'll be coming to will be the group of activities and then what fits in that. And we are going to use that matrix. So what you're talking about, we could say it's high value to this, but it's a low cost. Well, then you lose a social license if you take that away. So there's a whole lot of factors in helping make those decisions. So I get you what you're saying. What I'm trying to say is we could spend ages talking about how many rubbish bins are in park, or we can talk about actually some of the big stuff that will really change direction and be way more future focused. Yeah.
Thank you. And I think that brings an end to that part of our informational part on the agenda. Just to say that, the long-term plan requires a lot of mahi. There'll be a lot of hours consumed, not just from us councillors, but from the staff's perspective. You will have many opportunities, from my experience, to have a lot of input and say, but I guess the key messaging from all of us is, we want to know what our financial appetite is, along beside what our aspirations are for our community. And I guess it's really hard to take your personal view out of what you may have campaigned on or what you believe in for the wider good of our whole district. So Leonie, thank you. Thank you, Sue, for all the mahi that you're doing, and look forward to the next lot of information. And on that note, we're going to move on now. And so this is page 5 on your agenda, everybody. Three Waters and Waste Management Report. Welcome, David. Thank you for coming and representing on behalf of Mike, who's not here. Wrong Mike.
Good morning, councillors. I'm David Stevenson, team leader of Stormwater and Waste Management and the Water and Waste team. So the first report I'll be presenting today is the Three Waters and Waste Management report, essentially an operational update. And what I'm proposing to do is just give you updates on each activity and then take questions, but otherwise take the report as read. So in terms of, if we go first to the water supply activity, just a couple of items to add to that. Since writing the report, we've also had a further E. coli detected in Collingwood, and that resulted in a boil water notice. It was a single E. coli in the network, and after 5 days, the boil water notice was lifted. And we also had a minor issue with the Brightwater UV treatment plant, where there was partially treated water entering the network. Other than that, happy to take any questions on water supply.
Mike, you have a question?
Thank you, through the chair. You just mentioned about the E. coli in Collingwood. Correct me if I'm wrong, but you take a system-wide, network-wide series of sampling on a daily basis, and that's just a presence and absence testing for E. coli. And then after that, once you get a presence, you go back and confirm that there is E. coli. Is that correct?
That's my understanding, yes.
And that's when the regulatory authority get involved then and get notified that we've had a transgression, and that's when we go to sampling for 5 days until we get 5 days clear of E. coli.
I probably need to get some more information on that level of detail, but I know that it was a single E. coli detected in the network.
So thank you for that response. I guess we just have to be mindful as councillors that David isn't a water engineer and he's doing his best to represent a report written by Mike. So some of those questions, David can actually get Mike to come back to us on, as opposed to him being put Johnny on the spot, not being 100% certain of the response. So just let's respect the role that David's playing today for us.
I've got one more question.
Yes, Mike.
Can I ask about water supply reactive maintenance?
Yes, no problem.
It's really going up way over budget. Is there any response as to why it's going over budget, and what are we doing to?
So Mike, can I just get you to pause because that's in the next report. Thank you. Anyone else got any questions that relate to this report, which starts on page 5? Okay, so I've got Mark Greening and then Dave.
Camera's working now. Yeah, I just had a broad question around why the aspiration is to work with Marlborough on shared services, given they're a CCO. When I would have thought it would make more sense to take a shared services approach with Nelson, who are also adopting an internal service delivery model similar to what we're doing, and given that we also have a closer relationship with Nelson than Marlborough.
Through the chair, my understanding of that is that through this process, we have been engaging with all of our neighbours, but in particular with Marlborough at the moment, there's some opportunities to help each other and assist and compare notes on delivery of services. We do meet with Nelson quite frequently, but there's certainly opportunities to learn in both directions between us and Marlborough, even though there's quite separate proposals in terms of the delivery.
Yeah, so can I just signal, I suppose, that I'd really like to see us leaning more into Nelson than Marlborough, and this report really doesn't emphasise that. So if we are, that's great. But we take the opportunities where we can garner information from other councils. But that's really where I'd want to see us leaning more into rather than Marlborough. And I'll just leave that observation there. Thank you.
Thank you for that, Mark. That will be noted. I mean, some of these questions would be easier answered by Richard Kirby, but I'm not sure if you're aware he's not present today. We will move on now to the next one, which is Dave.
Thank you, through the chair. Just a question around there's the introduction of network pressure monitoring rules, and can you explain those costs related to what I believe is what we use for security of the network is residual chlorine testing?
Yes, so through the chair, Taumata ROI were consulting on whether or not pressure network monitoring should be a requirement. That's more of a level of service in terms of whether you're providing a minimum or exceeding a maximum water pressure. So we've provided feedback. We don't know what Te Mata Arawai will decide in terms of network monitoring, but in terms of indicative costs, we're probably thinking in the order of $15,000 per monitoring point. And so that, that could easily and likely at least 2 monitoring points in each network, depending on where they decide. So that could be easily in the hundreds of thousands of dollars in terms of implementing a pressure monitoring network. But Te Mata Arawai haven't made a decision yet on the number of pressure monitoring points they'll require us to introduce, but in that order of 10 to 15,000 per point.
Thank you. So if I interpret that answer correctly, this is a compliance cost, not a infrastructure cost?
That's correct. We'll need to install infrastructure we'd need to install most likely a lateral onto the main and put a pressure transducer and transmitting device and key that back into our SCADA. So that's a capital cost in the order of $15,000 per site. And depending on whether we bring it back into our SCADA or in another system, we'd need to estimate the operating costs as well.
Celia.
Thank you, Chair. So these extra costs we're talking about, they are going to be funded by the water users, aren't they?
Through the Chair, that's correct.
They're not going to come from rates, general rates, they're going to be, depending on what Te Mata Arawai decides in terms of their extra monitoring, each will come with a cost, which will then be borne by the water consumers.
Through the Chair, that's correct.
Yeah.
Mark.
Thank you, through the Chair, Trunty. Just a question, how many of these sites would there be, like an area of Tasman, Richmond, the areas that are run by this water source? So how, you're looking at 15,000 a site per site. How regular are they?
Sorry, off the top of my head, I think we have 12, in the order of 12 to 15 supplies. So you'd be looking at, we did some rough maths in the office. So potentially 12 to 15 networks with potentially 2 pressure transducers, maybe 3 in each.
So it's just a couple on each supply you're talking about.
So if you're looking to work up a total number, it could be capital cost in the order of up to $300,000, depending on where Te Mata Arawai land in terms of what they require from us. That was our first estimate, was in that sort of 100 and something to $300,000.
Oh, okay, thank you very much.
Joe.
Thank you, through you, Chair. Actually, further to this question, because the more you read it, and it doesn't seem quite so important. But so this monitoring of the pressure, so I assume that if we're monitoring it, that we would have to have a certain standard of water pressure, which could be a challenge, and we would have to rectify that, I'm assuming. So that is something else we would have to figure into future costs.
Through the Chair, that's correct. We already have levels of service, a minimum and maximum pressures that we endeavour to meet, and this is about demonstrating whether or not we meet that level of service.
Thank you, David, for your response. We're now going to adjourn and break for a cup of tea break. Yeah, sorry, do I jump the gun?
That's right. So that's the water supply. I can now give an update on wastewater.
After our cup of tea and we've had our caffeine fix, by all means, you will be coming back to talk to the bigger topic on your agenda. Well, Mike's agenda. So we'll break for 10 minutes. We'll see you back here at 25 to. Thanks, team. Thank you. If I could. Okay. So we have Dave again representing Mike, so be mindful. This is not his report that he is having to cover, and obviously there'll be things that can come back when we put them down as an action item for the things that David may not be able to share the answers with. So the Three Waters operation maintenance forecast for January 2026. We're on page 29 of your agenda. And I'll open up for David to make comments.
If I could, I'm happy to take any other questions for the rest of the operations report, but
apologies, apparently we didn't finish the operations report and I adjourned for a cup of tea. So anything that's in the operations report. Okay, the first one we have is Brent.
Thank you, through the chair. So David, there was this portable UV treatment plant thingy-mabob at the wastewater plant in Motueka at one stage. Does that actually help combat some of that ammonia and nitrogen build-up, or is this a totally different system? Just give me 101 science in terms of, is there anything practical that we could be doing more of to see this plant failing less that we have available without? Sorry.
So Becky Marzo, she's team leader for wastewater.
Yes.
So I'll ask Becky to answer that.
Through the chair, yes, the UV facility you're talking about there is part of it is going to be installed properly this year. It's the supercritical UV unit, and it treats the bypass from the ponds when we have to have those over pumping into the wetlands. So that just provides additional treatment, essentially.
Does it provide any solution to the nitrogen and ammonia issue as well, or this is a totally separate?
Yeah, this is totally separate at this stage. We are looking at other options for the nitrogen.
Right. Okay, and the Stevens Bay issue that pops up this time every year, and I'm sure I read there's hint in there in terms of it may not be a discharge, but we may know what it was. I just can't believe was late. So what is the situation? Is it anything to do with our infrastructure and failing? Is it an unknown, or is it a phenomenon that we just don't know yet?
Through the chair, it's a bit of an interesting one, this one. We did find that there was a bit of an overflow coming from one of the manholes that had resulted from a blockage caused by roots in our wastewater system. Those roots were removed, and the overflow itself was very contained in that area, and has been cleaned up and thoroughly disinfected. We've put that particular length of main on an annual CCTV schedule now to keep track of tree roots, and I know there's been an overflow there in the past, maybe 3 years ago, but it seems to be that in that particular area, we've been trying to figure out exactly what's going on. It's not from the wastewater system itself, but it could be a sort of habitat that's conducive for growing this bacteria once it's already in the system, and during the summer months it sort of breeds. So we are doing a lot of testing in that area and working with other departments in council to try and get to the bottom of it. But it's not the fault or an ongoing fault with the wastewater system. It's something that's happened quite a while ago and just seems to be self-perpetuating once it's in that particular habitat, if that makes sense.
It sort of makes sense, because in Golden Bay on Monday we heard about the phenomenon of arsenic levels in our water in terms of somewhere naturally somehow this just creeps. So it sort of does make a little bit of sense in terms of that. Thanks.
Pat, you have a question with operations?
Well, it's the overspend, so it's part of the water operations.
Do we have, just pause that for a moment? That actually is in the report that I thought we were starting now, but hadn't realised we hadn't covered the rest of ops. Is there anything else that you want to speak to from that report, David?
So in terms of the wastewater, just an update that that repair on the Motueka Bridge is scheduled to commence in the first week of March. So just an update on that. On the stormwater, not a lot of update there, just that we do have the results back from the eDNA analysis for the stormwater network, which indicates presence of human bacteria in Reservoir Creek, Walk Creek and Woodlands Drain, but none in Patama or Jimmy Lee Creek. So that's an update for stormwater. And finally, for waste management, really just highlighting that unfortunately our application to the Ministry for the Environment, we got a strong indication that was unlikely to be successful. That was for an upgrade of the MRF. So just highlighting that we'll be looking at the capital spend in that area and reprioritising that. And finally, just an update on batteries and battery fires. We now have battery bins at all 5 of our resource recovery centres. So happy to take any other questions.
So a quick question from myself. Will we be doing some more comms around the batteries and why we've got extra bins and where they would be located?
Yes, that'll be a newsline coming up in the next issue of Newsline.
More than what's in the current Newsline though, where we'll do something separate, maybe?
That's correct. We'll look to do
Internally,
some
maybe.
wider.
Thank you. Any other questions? Yes, Dave?
Thank you, Trinity. Just a very quick one. The total nitrogen and ammonia at the Motueka wastewater treatment looked reasonably high for the last month. Is there any identification of what caused that?
Not that I'm aware of. Becky, do you know any particular reason? No, not that we're aware of.
No further questions from any councillors? None online? Okay, let's move on to the next report, which is on page 29 of your agenda.
Thank you. Thank you, Chair and councillors. First, just a couple of 2 corrections and 1 clarification for this report. On page 31, under the wastewater section, we need to correct 2 of those numbers. Under the reticulation table, it reads an annual plan budget of 286,000. That should be 256,000. And the forecast spend, we've been looking into some more detail there, and that forecast is now 257. So the plan budget of 256 and a forecast spend of 257. The second correction is on page 32, top of the page, and that's the response and repair costs for wastewater. Again, looking at some of the detail of those costs, that cost forecast is increasing from 267 to 465,000, and I'm happy to give some reasons for that. Well, perhaps I'll give you that reason now. So there's some of that initial response in the wastewater network was coded as a routine reactive cost when it should have been coded as an event response cost. And there was some replacement pump work in Mapua that was incorrectly coded as a replacement or a renewal when actually it was because of the event it failed. So it should be actually categorised as a repair cost from the event. And so those two reasons combined mean the forecast is now 465,000. Final clarification is back in the water supply, the last item in the table, the response and repairs is just for the urban network. That's 69,000 for the urban network repairs. So in terms of this, the purpose of this report, it's to give an early indication of where the some of our forecast maintenance, particularly reactive maintenance costs, are trending. These are normally covered in our operational reports, which you've just spoken about, and you will see those regular graphs. Those are routine in our operational updates. The intent for this is to put a bit more flesh on some of those reasons, but just noting that there's no decisions from this report, and it's expected that in April there'll be a report coming, most likely to full council, with some more information and potentially some decisions to make. So the purpose of this is to give you some more information, and I'm happy to take questions from any of the members.
So first up, we'll go back to Mike because he started a conversation which I shut him down on. So now's your opportunity.
Thank you. Through you, Madam Chair. Just the water reactive maintenance going way over. Is there any way that we can attest that? Or can we pull it back? Or what's causing it all of a sudden? When we had a budget figure and within 12 months, it's going 2 times over it. And I've got another question to come too.
So through the chair, there are very little, particularly in water, events where we have a lot of choice around reactive maintenance. Primarily, we're looking at bursts and failures of pipes, and they need to be repaired. Some of those repairs come at a much greater cost than others, and we've just highlighted some of those more notable faults and repairs in the report. So you'll see that in Murchison, for instance, we've had 4 failures, 11,000 twice and 20,000 for a single failures. So there's not a lot of reactive maintenance that we've got a lot of discretion on, although what we are starting to do is log faults as urgent or non-urgent faults, and we're looking to package up non-urgent faults so that we address them in a planned way rather than responding immediately. But the vast majority, or certainly the majority of those faults, we don't have a lot of discretion on when we respond. And that may mean the weekend, it may mean out of hours. But recent events, we're looking at events and say, can this wait till the weekend's over? We'll come back in normal work hours, do it at a lot lower cost. But so we have some discretion, but not a lot of discretion, and not always a lot of control around the cost of that response.
Second question.
Well, if I could just also say and appreciate what your troops have been doing, where I was made aware of a leak in Brightwater on footpath on a Saturday afternoon, and it was deemed, Downer went out, it was deemed to be able to be left to the next working day, and it was done the next working day because of cost. And so we allowed the water to go down to a curb and channel, but because of the cost of repairing it, they decided to leave it to a working day, and I like that attitude. Thank you. On page 30, we've got the Water Reticulation Club, and you've got your burst there, like you said, in Murchison and Kaiteri and wherever. These are big costs, aren't they? Is there any synergies or anything that's sticking out in these costs involving? Is it materials cost has gone up? Is it labour costs gone up? Is it the reinstatement, or is there anything that you can get in there that see that all of a sudden the prices have gone up? Because to me, $12,000 for a burst main in Eversley Street is a lot of money. Do you know if you're doing any reviews about what the actual costs are? I suppose that's my question.
So through the chair, our main focus in the last 12 months has been both that planned versus reactive. That's been a recent discussion to save costs that way. The second thing has really been around traffic management, and we're seeing some wins now around the risk-based traffic management approach. So that's starting to flow through into lower traffic management costs now, but it's early days at this stage.
Thank you. We'll move on to Kit.
Just quickly, David, and it's probably not you to answer this, but I'd like the information in April. Is any of these water costs that have gone over, can any of them be attributed back to the weather events in some way?
Through the chair, as best I know, where it was weather related, it's been coded. So after that weather event, we put a pretty careful comb over everything. And certainly I'm aware of, particularly in the treatment plants and the intakes in Pahara and other places, if it was weather related, it was coded to the weather event. So I'd be quite confident that it's very unlikely that these are weather related.
Supplementary, then we're getting our budget wrong, because this has been the second year in a row that we've been well over. And that just tells me if you look at the network, we've got some problems.
Yeah, so from my recollection, it's essentially with reactive maintenance. It does move around, but it tends to move around an average. And it's really the appetite when setting those budgets, what risk you want to accept of going over budget, whether you want to budget conservatively or less conservatively, and the trade-off between the risk and the budget that you set. And so my understanding is we've budgeted, on the lower end of the reactive maintenance, and the risk is landing with those costs over budget this year.
Thank you. And no doubt when the full report comes in April, there'll be way more detail than what we've got in this information report. We're now going to move on to Brent and then Joe.
Thanks, Chair. And it's probably the April where this will flesh out, David, but in terms of this primarily operational costs, so there's no move to CapEx values of the CapEx itself. If it's operational, we're looking at 2 million, so 2.1% in terms of a negative start in terms of our annual plan process, aren't we? That's where we're sitting in terms of just this piece of work.
Yeah, through Chair, that's largely correct. I can see the numbers at the moment in terms of what we've put into the draft annual plan, reflecting on 5 years of history of reactive maintenance. And so we've prepared numbers that will filter through to the annual plan of what we believe is a reasonable estimate for reactive maintenance. Around the capital, we always look at, if there's a failure and that results in a renewal, then we will capitalise that renewal, but not the response cost of it. And in terms of that trade-off between renewals and repairs, we have started to increase our renewals budgets now, but that will take some time to filter through in terms of reduced reactive maintenance.
And just for clarity in the statement, what do you think? This 2.1% plus the revised budget for the AP and the current rate capping conversation for government is excluded from any rate capping for councils because water entities will be outside of that.
That's my understanding.
Thanks, Chair. Mine too.
Thank you for that. Joe?
Thank you, Chair. David, I'm a bit confused. I thought I heard when you were saying, but I didn't pick it up in the report, that there were part of the budget overrun with some miscodings and that some were related to the weather event and had been coded into maintenance. Is that correct?
Through the Chair, it's the reverse of that. So
okay.
Some of the earlier response to the June-July events were coded to a regular reactive maintenance, and that's why you see that wastewater. That's one reason, in part, that there's a minor reduction in that wastewater retick, but also the renewal of a pump in Mapua was coded as a renewal when actually it was a failure during the event. So there's a combination of events there that some were coded as reactive maintenance, should have been the weather event, and likewise the that pump failure, which is why that update I gave, the cost of response in wastewater to the events increased from 267 to 465.
So we've been okay to claim that because I realise that there's quite a procedure to claim for those events. So we've been able to get that in and appropriately claim it.
I'd need to check whether we've actually reached our insurance deductible for that. I don't believe we have, because I don't think we've met the threshold for that in the wastewater network, but it's certainly been coded to the event, so we can attribute to the event rather than to normal reactive.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Joe. Got Dave and then followed by Dean.
Thank you, Trinity, through the Chair. Just a short question around procurement processes. Could you give us a short brief on the type of processes you go through, analysis of failures, the selection of materials used for pipes and valves, and that compared to what you know about the failures that have been in the past?
Yes, happy to do that. So in terms of the water supply network in particular, we've been doing a lot more work in the last 18 months on failure analysis and trying to get a better correlation between age of network, type of material and failure. I didn't quite understand the question around procurement aspect of that.
Just to rephrase, so when we're looking at procurement now, are we basing our selection of materials for the pipes and pumps and valves on our history of failures and knowing what did work or what didn't work, and how long that projected working life of that asset would be?
Through the chair, yes, largely a lot of the failures we're seeing are in asbestos cement pipes, which we don't use anymore, and likewise some lower grade PVC pipes as well. Those are our main issues, whereas we tend to work into a higher grade PVC and PE pipes as well now.
Okay, Dean.
Thank you, Chair. So much of the reactive maintenance over expenditure as a result of an ageing pipe network and insufficient renewals undertaken over the past few years. I haven't been here for the past few years, so I'm just trying to catch up. We used to have a replacement program. Has that been cut back?
So my understanding, and from memory, is that we had a higher renewals program that dropped for some years, but it's lifted again in recent years. So just certainly in the last 12 months, we've had a higher renewals budget than we did in previous years.
So through the chair, might trying to understand. So is our next year or couple of years budget, is that catching us up to where we should be, or have we not got enough budget for that?
Through the chair, it is a bit of a test and see. So the discussion in the previous LTP was around sweating the asset, which is perhaps programming your renewals less conservatively. The more we do it, and the more we analyse the failures, we'll start to understand better. So it's this trade-off between, are we replacing these pipes too soon, or it's very difficult to replace them at just the right time, but we're putting more effort and time into assessing that. So it's a work in progress at the moment.
So can I just pause you for a minute? Appreciate the questions, appreciate Dave's response, but I guess the directive I'm getting is a lot of these conversations should be on the long-term plan workshops, where we're tracking, where we're heading. And I'm not so sure that we will get any more answers today, unless you've got a completely different question, Dean.
Yes, but that is, through the chair, the goal that I'm trying to get to for our big picture planning is trying to decide where we need to spend the money and questions I need to have answers to at that time. Thank you. But the other one is the low pressure pump systems. I assume we're still putting these in, and my understanding of how it happens is the contractor puts these systems in on a subdivision and then hands them over to council to look after from thereafter. Is that correct?
Through Chair, that's correct. And a lot of the faults that we're seeing are around users putting what they shouldn't down the toilet, basically. And we're looking at a higher cost recovery approach to that our first response is at council's cost largely, but subsequent visits, we look to recovering that cost. If somebody's flushing wet wipes or fabric down the toilet and it's jamming the pump, then that cost should go back to the homeowner, not to council.
Just trying to future-proof design things. Can we design them in such a way better that the problem happens at the house rather than affecting other people, kind of thing? Is that something that we're looking at?
Through the chair. So when we do have problems with the low pressure pump systems, it doesn't affect others. It is just purely that one private property that is affected. We are putting more and more of these in, and we will continue to do so because our networks are pretty much at capacity. And putting these low pressure pump systems in means that you can change the time of day where you have peak flows in the network. So it's very good for that side of things. It's also very good for reducing your inflow and infiltration into a network as well, because it's a closed system. So people if people are hooking up their downpipe from the roof into their low pressure pump system, they're the ones going to be experiencing overflows, not the rest of the network. So they certainly do have their merits, and we are going to be using them more. We've got they are starting to come to not quite the end of their life yet, but they are getting to that stage now where we are experiencing more and more issues that we need to respond to with control panels and pressure switches and the actual pumps themselves. So as we go on, we're starting to get more and more of these, but also they are aging. So we are getting a lot more issues.
So just to clarify through the chair, so the cost of replacing them is council or the house?
Yeah, through the chair, the cost of renewals is ours. Cost of attending blockages that have been caused by homeowners gets charged back to the homeowner.
Okay, Mike, I believe you have one more question.
If I may, Madam Chair, and I'll be very quick. Matua pump renewal. My understanding of those pumps are fairly recent, well, definitely nowhere near the end of their life. Is there any explanation why it had to be replaced? One, and two, did you replace it with a bigger volume pump?
Through the chair, no, we didn't replace it with a large pump. We replaced pretty much the same size, but what happened was water got into the actual unit itself and damaged the pump. It got into the controls. So that's why it was, as a result, direct from the storm. The chamber filled too much.
Okay, thank you. Thank you very much, Becky and David, for your responses. Muchly appreciated. Thank you, councillors. We're going to move on to our last agenda item, which is the annual air quality report. We welcome Diana to the table.
Morena koutou.
Now, just so you're up with everything, page 33 on your agenda. Sorry, you can continue now that I've rudely interrupted you.
Sorry, apologies. Kia ora koutou, I'm Diana Worthy, Team Leader, Natural Resources Policy.
Hello, I'm Anna McKenzie, Resource Scientist, Contaminants.
So the annual air quality report sets out council's activities in relation to air, particularly around our air quality monitoring, primarily in Richmond Airshed, compliance information, our non-regulatory programs, and also policy planning. So attachment 1 to the agenda is the actual report itself. If we may, we'll take the report as read and happy to take any questions. Thank you.
Okay, so I have Brent and then Kit.
Thank you, through the chair. I've only got one question. So there's a recommendation in there about doing additional monitoring and testing through the winter months for nitrogen oxide. If we tested and found out, what would we do? So if we have an answer, what does that mean? That's the bit that's missing. So we could find this out, but how do we fix it? What changes? What cost? What happens?
Through the chair, so the air quality national environmental standards have a 1 hour standard in relation to nitrogen dioxide. So through doing further monitoring, because the monitoring that we have completed is more kind of research monitoring, it was just cost-effective research monitoring to see, is there an issue that we need to investigate further? And we've decided that yes, there is an issue that we'd like to investigate further. So off the back of the future monitoring, then we'll know in terms of how that fits in relation to what the standard is for the NES, and then do we need to actually, I suppose, monitor and manage that discharge.
Sorry, just through the chair, what does the manage mean? What does manage look like?
Well, typically that would be through rules in your plan. However, in terms of obviously currently we're going through RM reform at the moment, and those bills are supposed to be enacted by the middle of this year. And so then we'll see what that new air quality framework is like.
Thank you, Brent. Kit?
Diana, thanks for your report. I've seen these for a number of years and I've seen a gradual improvement. But how many problem properties do we have left in the Richmond airshed? Because that to me is where the problem comes from.
So through the chair, can you just expand on that question a little bit more? Sorry.
It comes from old wood burners. That's the problem that causes this, and the practice of some people burning wet wood. So we get complaints in the winter that I know compliance go and deal with. So how many sort of problem places have we got left in Richmond? Because as those wood burners get replaced with cleaner burning, and we use our good wood practices that we are encouraging the public to, we should have less infractions.
Through the chair, in terms of air quality, there's several variables at play here, particularly with home heating. And so it can be the type of wood burner you use, whether it's old or newer. Also in terms of the actual wood, is it dry, is it wet, how you use your wood burner, and then in terms of actual, yearly variances around the weather. And, we have temperature inversion layers from time to time, so that really traps in the pollution. In terms of the air quality NES, the Richmond airshed is currently compliant because we haven't had any exceedances of that daily standard. However, World Health Organization has been saying for probably 2 decades now that we should really be focusing on PM 2.5. And as you see from the report, there is an issue there with 2.5. So what we want to see through the RM reform is, are we required to monitor and manage PM 2.5? And if that is the case, that will be quite a significant shift in terms of what we need to do around education advice, as well as that regulatory framework, and that will require staff resourcing and budgets.
Well, the government hasn't said they're going to do it yet, and I think you've talked to us about that for over 10 years.
Yes.
So we can't do anything yet, and it'll be a big cost. But we have problem houses that we get complaints about. The question is, how many of these people do we need to go and see to improve the situation? Because I know that we get complaints and people go and monitor it.
Yeah, that's right. Our compliance team have done a couple of nighttime patrols looking at wood burners, and our first line of defence is education and advice before we clamp down. We also have particular rules in the TRMP for the Richmond airshed in terms of non-compliant wood burners, and a point of sale rule, so people that have to require to upgrade at the time of sale if they want to use a wood burner.
So you're not giving me an answer. You can't tell me how many we've got. Problem people in Richmond.
In terms of, sorry, through the chair, the non-compliant wood burners, I think it's under 200 at the moment that we know have old ones, and so we're watching and waiting. There isn't a requirement there to actually take it out with that point of sale rule, so it could change hands and someone still has that non-compliant burner, but they're using their heat pump instead.
Thanks.
I've got Dean and then Joe.
Yeah, just curious, do we have have we done a monitoring situation in one of the more remote places as opposed to a built-up area to get our baseline? Like, I'm wondering, do we, Australian fires, just whatever is in the atmosphere normally, do we have a baseline figure of that and what affects it?
No, we don't monitor in rural areas, if that's sort of your question. We do monitor in Richmond, and we have done some trial monitoring in some of the smaller townships, but we haven't got any sort of background monitoring as such in like a remote area, if that's what you're sort of asking.
I think you're just trying to get an idea whether we have a neutral baseline if we weren't affecting it.
No, it would be good if we could set monitors up throughout the region, but no, we don't have a network of monitors. We just have
right.
Towns.
And so, just through the chair, going back to the deputy mayor's question there. What rules and regulations would we clamp down on for the NO2 to reduce it?
Through the chair, yeah, that's a bit of a tricky question. I don't know if there are other councils that are having to actively currently monitor NO2 in terms of that daily standard. But I think for us, it's best that we understand if there is actually an issue there, and then would be able to work through. But certainly, the greatest emission from NO2 is from transport. So as part of our wider community partnerships team, and I think also the transport team, promoting things like walking, cycling, and taking the bus to actually reduce vehicle movements on our roads is a big help.
Sorry, Joe, and then I have Celia.
Thank you, through you, Chair. Thanks for the report. It's always interesting to look at this one. I'm just wondering, like, we have a high number of complaints and a relatively low number where we've had to issue infringement notices or warnings or whatever else. So I'm just trying to get an idea of, one person's problem is another person's normal activity. So I'm trying to get a feel of, generally, are people looking like they're sticking to the rules? I mean, they may be annoying their neighbour, but, what is the actual behaviour of our community out there as regards to the fires and the things like that? I know we've had significant improvement in behaviour in rural areas and how people are lighting fires. Is that the case, or are we getting an increasing problem? I'm just trying to get an idea of that.
Through the chair, the majority of the complaints that the compliance team have responded to was in relation to smoke, and I think the bulk of them was outdoor burning. So there has to be an ongoing, I suppose, campaign and messaging around best burning. We have a lot of information on our website, but staff are currently about to start a discussion around what are the key messages that we want to push this year in terms of our communication and education. So it is just always an ongoing thing that we need to actively keep hammering home about.
Celia?
Thank you. Yeah, just the research about the vehicles being the main source of nitrogen oxides. That's the NO2, isn't it? Yeah. So would you be thinking that this would be picked up in the climate change strategy and action plan, because it flows on, doesn't it? If we're going to reduce this, because it is actually has an immediate health effect on people, but also it is a global warming factor, so it's actually got two effects, and we need to remember that. Yeah, so we've got the immediate health, but then we've also got emissions. So would you be thinking you're going to feed this into the climate action plan to towards encouraging or looking for the long-term plan at our public transport resourcing? And that's probably the main one.
Through the chair, yeah. So we have received this report recently, and we have shared that with the activity management planners for transport. But yeah, as we review the climate change action plan, there is opportunity there to get better alignment, and it just reinforces, yeah, the things that we do need to do more.
It's very important information, actually, isn't it? Yeah.
Thanks, Celia. Dave?
Thank you, Trinity. Through the chair, just going back to those WHO recommendations, and I presume they are set about protecting human health. So I'm wondering if they have metrics around what sort of conditions would present if you exceed those recommendations, and do we monitor human health in our outcomes in our communities? Do we see a prevalence of asthma or any other related breathing difficulties in Richmond as opposed to other areas? And again, goes back to someone who made the point about a baseline. Do we have a baseline for human health outcomes in different aspects of our community, particularly ones that are showing, the higher particles in the air?
Through the chair, so I think it was back in 2022, the HAPPENS report was released. So that's the Health and Air Pollution New Zealand report, and that tries to quantify the impacts of air pollution on the population, and it was for all of New Zealand, and it's very high level. And I think it does able to actually equate an estimated number of deaths per district, and also the financial implications of health effects. I don't have that information to hand directly, but certainly I can share it with you. It does, identify, I think, about 34 deaths or so within Tasman district as a result of air pollution. And that was based on 2016 data, but certainly we can get that to you.
Thank you. Yeah, I just thought it would be interesting if we're talking about human health in the community, if the hospital could supply asthma attacks in Richmond or something that would give us a basis to correlate our human health against what we're proposing here.
Through the chair, that type of information, there's privacy issues around it. So we just can't get access to that information, whereas the HAPPENS report, because it's done more at a higher population level across New Zealand, they are able to generally access it. So yeah, we have to use HAPPENS as our starting point.
Thank you for the questions, Dave. And I guess my question would be the HAPPENS report, how often does that report happen and how often can we be updated with that?
Through the chair, I want to say maybe every 10 years or so. Yeah.
Hardly recent data then if it's 10 years old. Okay, as the chair, I might think about that a little bit further. I guess for my contribution to this conversation is, we can have complying houses, and I know that Kit was asking how many are non-complying within Richmond, but, like in Motueka, we've got houses that comply with their wood burners, but then over Christmas, someone decided in our local area to burn rubbish in their indoor burner, because that's one way of disposing, excess rubbish from Christmas. And I know because we got a call come through to the service centre on it. So it's pretty hard to work out what's a complying house and what's not. I guess my question is, the best way that we can get people on board is by doing communication and education. And I just wonder, in our annual plan, do you have the budget to be able to do that piece of the education delivery on our project of what we want to aim for?
Through the chair, our community partnerships team hold a budget of about 5,000 per year for education and advice currently. Certainly through the RM reform, if we are required to monitor and manage PM 2.5, that budget would need to significantly increase. We also work closely with Dave Pullen at the Home Heating Association, and so do pop-up events around the district and education and advice. And yeah, as I said previously, we will shortly be, I suppose, doing a refresh of that communications for this year, because having written this report, it highlights there are a couple of key areas where we really need to boost our information and education, particularly around things like burning CCA treated timber.
Thank you. Appreciate your report. Mike, is it a quick question?
Through you, Madam Chair. No, it's not a quick question. It's actually a comment. It's a bouquet. It's an appreciation for your report. It's been a pleasure to read. It's set a high bar that I hope other staff can actually achieve up to your report. It's a good layout, good content, and good relevance. And so, from me, thank you for your attached report.
Thank you. And Celia, do you have one more question?
Sorry, yeah, so look, what is the interface between council and Te Whatu Ora Health? So are they pulling back on their services for, community health for asthma and stuff like that? Or do you work with them? Because just going back to our long-term plan presentation, we don't want to be paying for things that someone else can be doing.
Through the chair, I used to have a contact with him, but he's since left, and I suppose that relationship has been lost a little bit. However, the council has very clear RMA requirements around what we need to do in terms of monitoring and managing, particularly air pollutants, but we can work in tandem. So certainly once we see the outcome of the RM bill and what's required, I think we need to kind of booster that relationship again.
Thank you. Appreciate that. Obviously, working in collaboration and not doing the PHO or anyone else's work is our forefront when we're looking at long-term plans and fiscal packages that are quite restrained. My last comment before I hand over to Kieran, who's going to do the closing karakia, is apologies, Henry. Welcome. Thank you for coming all the way over from the Bay and joining us today. And yeah, my apologies for not acknowledging you at the beginning of our meeting. So from behalf of me, thank you, everybody. Thank you for your contributions. Thank you for keeping this as an information forum and not turning it into a workshop, which was always my biggest fear for today. Thank you to the staff. And Kieran, if you could close, please.
Thank you, and also thank you to Madam Chair for absolutely smashing it. So kia hiki te kōrero, kia wātea, kia mama te manoa o te tangata, kia u ki te ara mō tātou e ora nei, ko ronga ki runga, kia tina, hui tai ki e. Let the discussions be lifted, clear away and ease the hearts of the people, keep focus on the path of life, peace is upheld, say yes, bind us together, and so it is.